Hello, world history students. I hope that you're well. I hope that your friends and family are well. I hope that you have adjusted to the virtual learning that we've been undergoing for the last 6+ weeks. I have to be honest, I miss teaching you in our classroom. I really miss our lively discussions, and I really miss seeing your beautiful faces. At any rate, we're about to embark on our final unit called the Eastern Hemisphere, and I'm excited to share some information with you. There are 3 questions we're going to tackle. It's going to be about who these people are of the Eastern Hemisphere, what these people had of value, and finally, how they connected with one another. So where is the Eastern Hemisphere? Well, if we take a map and we put a grid on top of it, and we basically split it in half. Now we're splitting it along a line of longitude called the prime meridian. We, of course, have 2 halves of our world. We have a western half of the world, or the Western Hemisphere, and we have the eastern half of the world, or the Eastern Hemisphere. And our story, of course, is taking place in the eastern half of the world. We are specifically going to begin looking at the peoples of Africa. The time period in which we're looking at the peoples of Africa is, in fact, during a period we call the Middle Ages. Zooming into just Africa, there are 3 kingdoms we're going to highlight. We've got a kingdom in West Africa, a kingdom in East Africa, and a kingdom in Southern Africa. All 3 of these kingdoms are below the Sahara Desert. We say that they are sub-Saharan kingdoms because they are below the Sahara Desert, and the prefix sub means under or below. In this map, we're highlighting Africa's major rivers. The 3 kingdoms we're going to take a look at all are connected to major rivers. In West Africa, we have a river called the Niger River, and this river flows into a major ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. In East Africa, we have a river that we have studied before. It is called the Nile River, and this river flows into the Mediterranean Sea. In Southern Africa, I'm going to highlight 2 rivers, the Zambezi River and the Limpopo River. And these 2 rivers empty into the Indian Ocean. Let's go take a look at our first West African kingdom on the Niger River. So the kingdom in West Africa is called Ghana, and Ghana had an abundance of gold. So gold was plentiful, and they used their gold to exchange it for things that they truly needed. And one commodity, one resource that existed throughout the Sahara region was salt. And so gold was often used in exchange for salt. Salt, like I just mentioned, is found in abundance in the Sahara Desert. And salt is important for a variety of different reasons. For one, it helps enhance the flavor of your food. For 2, it helps to preserve meat. So in a day and age when you don't have a refrigerator and you can't keep your food fresh and cool, salt is a great way to use to preserve your meat. Another thing that's important about salt is in a place where the climate is extremely hot and people sweat, they lose a lot of sodium. And so it's important to replenish the sodium lost. And you can do that, of course, by ingesting salt. Here are 3 pictures that show the process of getting the salt from the ground. So basically, salt is typically exists as deposits in ancient underground seabeds, which become buried over thousands of years. And in image A, you can see that there has been some kind of mining, some kind of drilling into the Saharan desert, into the soil, and under the soil, layers upon layers under the soil, you can begin to see the exposure of the salt there. Image B shows an actual, what we call a salt mine. It's underground and all of the salt that has collected. In image C, we can see these salt slabs, and these are the slabs that actually would have been, and still are, put onto camels and walked across the desert so that they could be traded for whatever goods the traders needed at the time. We're talking about each camel carrying probably about 200 pounds of the salt slabs, and at its height, a camel caravan might have included about 500 camels. So I'll leave you to do the math on how much salt was actually in a caravan and traded along the Sahara Desert. There is a name for the trade route that covered the Sahara Desert and linked West and East Africa. And the name for that is the Trans-Saharan Trade Route. Trans means across. So in simplest terms, this is a trade route across the Sahara Desert. This map shows the Trans-Saharan trade route. What you should notice is that it is not one path or one route. It is a collection of routes across the Sahara Desert. Again, we're connecting West Africa with East Africa, and there's a variety of ways to connect those two. We call all of these the Trans-Saharan trade routes, and we're mostly looking at an exchange of gold in West Africa for salt found in the Sahara Desert. So in image A, we're looking at a camel caravan, a line of camels, a group of camels traversing the Sahara Desert. And in image B, you're looking at a tent where the people involved in the caravan would be able to stop for the day, stop for the night, sleep, then roll up their equipment, put it back on their camels' backs, and continue on crossing the desert. Because of the extensive travel and trade along the Sahara Desert, linking West and East Africa, we know that there is a lot of exchange of goods, but there's also an exchange of cultures. And one group whose culture becomes pretty prominent because of this trans-Saharan trade are the Arabs living in the Middle East, many of whom participated in the camel caravans across the Sahara Desert and brought their Islamic religion and traditions with them. As they cross the Sahara Desert and head towards West Africa, they will find many converts along the way. Eventually, Ghana does fall. There are a series of droughts, there are civil wars, and a new kingdom called Mali takes its place in West Africa. Mali was ruled by a powerful king by the name of Mansa Musa. This picture shows him sitting on his throne, wearing a crown, probably gold-leafed, holding a staff that also looks like it is golden, and potentially holding a giant gold piece of rock there in his hand. While listening to one of my favorite radio programs, I heard this little bit about Mansa Musa.
Good morning, I'm Renee Montaigne. Nearly 700 years after he ruled the Mali Empire, King Mansa Musa has been awarded the title of richest person in history, personal fortune $400 billion. That's according to a new inflation-adjusted list compiled by Celebrity Net Worth. West Africa's salt and gold were the source of Musa's great wealth, which he used to build magnificent mosques. More modern names on the list, the Rothschilds and John D. Rockefeller. It's Morning Edition.
So, very powerful and rich king of Mali also expands Mali's borders towards the Atlantic. This map highlights the extent of the Mali Empire. You may have heard in that little bit that Mansa Musa does build mosques. He's building mosques because he has converted to the religion of Islam. So he did build mosques throughout Mali. This mosque in particular is one he had built in the city of Timbuktu. The three tall features there are the West African version of the mosque's minarets, as we've talked about before. Mansa Musa does establish the city Timbuktu as not only a prosperous city, but a city becomes the center of trade and learning. People from all over the Eastern Hemisphere hear rumors of the prosperity and the cultural learning and experiences that one can have in Timbuktu, and they yearn to visit Timbuktu. Mali eventually collapses, probably due to, again, droughts and civil wars, and eventually Songhai replaces Mali. Here you can see the three kingdoms. Ghana was the first kingdom in West Africa. Eventually it was replaced by Mali, and eventually Mali was conquered and replaced by Songhai. Songhai truly is an extension of the previous kingdoms in West Africa. Let's move to our next kingdom. We have already talked about West Africa. Let's go ahead and head to East Africa. In East Africa, we find a kingdom called Axum. Axum is located south of what we call Nubia or Kush along the Red Sea. This map shows highlighted in purple where Axum is, and just northwest is Nubia Kush. So they're just south of Nubia Kush along the Red Sea. They dominated trade on the Med, Red, and Indian Ocean. So here's that same map in the top right corner. This Axum, the kingdom, was able to connect its trade to the Med Sea, to the Red Sea, and to the Indian Ocean. So trade was quite important to them. And because of their trade, which was centrally located, they became an international trading power. They eventually got wealthy enough and powerful enough to conquer Nubia Kush and were able to expand under the leadership of a king by the name of King Ezana. King Ezana ruled Axum and eventually converted to Christianity, which was surprising because most of the people close to the Arabian Peninsula in the Middle East had become Islamic. It is here that eventually the people of Axum under King Ezana meet their demise as the Muslims are far greater in number. They invade, they force Axum into hiding in the Ethiopian highlands, and it is here that they become isolated and weakened. Our final destination in Africa is going to be in southern Africa. In southern Africa, we see the kingdom of Great Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe actually translates to House of Rock or Stone Houses. And looking at these pictures, it's pretty clear why this area was nicknamed the House of Stone. So Great Zimbabwe was located between two rivers, the Zambezi and Limpopo rivers. You can see on the map below, it's highlighted there in white in between those two rivers. And the rivers are significant because, as you all know, rivers are great for farming. So it was really a place that was suited for farming and cattle raising, which means self-sufficiency. But it also was located close to the Indian Ocean, so it was really suited for Indian Ocean trade. And it's because of the Indian Ocean trade that the Kingdom of Zimbabwe was able to contact people all the way as far as China and all the way as far as India and all the way as far as Arabia. And we know this because there are porcelain shards from China and Indian beads and Arabian glass. So these artifacts have remained as proof that the people of Great Zimbabwe did explore quite far away from where they lived in southern Africa. I hope this has given you a bit of information regarding the three regions in West, East, and Southern Africa and the early kingdoms and people who existed in them. Take care.